Tuesday Talks.
Fun fact, I'm about to reach 2,000 days of being a full-time YouTuber.
That's a good thumbnail and title. 2,000 days of being a YouTuber. It's the only thing my brain can think of. Congratulations. No, that's a great title.
Well, you were partly responsible for that decision.
Well, you're welcome. And also, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for convincing you down this path.
I know it has been slight whirlwind, and I guess with our common ground of being, essentially penniless musicians that then moved into YouTube, that then your transition to full-on touring musician, which is where I'm like trying to get to, but in a baby steps way. How has it been sort of like just transitioning into this technically new but old familiar role, but at a very different level?
For sure. I mean, it's been a long process of transitioning from YouTube to being live musician, live artist. Honestly, it's been going on for maybe 4 or 5 years now. And it's very different, and it's different from what I was doing before as a session musician, working musician, playing little bar gigs, doing weddings, doing little off-Broadway things. It's a very different thing, and I feel like I am learning a lot more now about being a musician than I have at any point in the past couple years of doing YouTube. And that's very exciting for me because it feels like I'm constantly growing and constantly finding new things and then realizing just how big and how intense this wonderful world of live music and touring is. But it is at a higher level, and it's been it is a long process, but I think that's one that's worth it. And I think that's why you see people like yourself and other, like Jared Dines, I know is like touring a lot more now. And like people really want to be out there and doing this thing that they've been talking about on social media for so long. And now you're actually, doing it. And it's great. I love it. I feel so much like, honestly, more like there's more of a purpose, more of a direction, now for myself personally, because I am a musician first and foremost. I didn't start this to become a YouTuber. I started this to play bass with my friends. And that is exactly what I'm doing now. And I'm very grateful to be able to do that.
You released, was it a first EP in 2014 with Sungazer?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as
yes,
Sungazer.
we did. As Sungazer, yes.
I mean, that's a decade to be getting to this point. And that transition of your first album was 2021.
Correct, yes. It was
Look at me knowing my facts.
Yeah, oh my, you did the research, you did. Oh my God, incredible. So our first couple of EPs were literally just for fun. Sean Crowder and I recorded the first EP in our basement apartment in Brooklyn, and it was just for fun. This is before YouTube, before anything. We were very much checking out Evan Marion and Dana Hawkins. It was another bass and drum duo that like we took a lot of inspiration from, still do. And that was that. And then our first album was a pandemic project. Like, couldn't we actually record a full album? We did. And then over the past couple of years, we have been touring that album, but with the added benefit of having YouTube to promote, to talk about the things that our fans might want to know about the music, which is all the nerdy music theory stuff, showing the actual, behind the scenes of the vlogs and like, hey, this is what a tour is actually like. And we learned a lot about what works and what doesn't on YouTube as far as content that works around a touring band, and whether or not it's worth it to kill yourself to make content around that. And more I'm realizing like we don't want to, because for a variety of reasons, but the big ones are tour is very repetitive. It's the same thing every day. You clock in, you clock out, and it's the same story every day. You wake up, you drive, you sound check, you play a show, you have fun, and afterwards, and then for maybe 1 hour, and then you fall asleep, and then you do the same thing again, and then that's your day. And you can only tell that vlog so many times before it just, you yourself are not particularly inspired to tell that story again. And also that's just a day job. You're just doing a very aggressive day job, and it's showing a day in the life over and over again. That's the same day in the life. So it's hard to contentify being on tour, especially, you know how much it takes to just get in your head and try and focus and tell a story when you're vlogging. And all of that energy really should be towards performing and getting to the venue and doing the sound check and all of the stuff that goes alongside being on tour. So the two of those things, being a YouTube content creator and then being a touring musician, they're often kind of like, aren't super compatible all the time. But we're trying to make it work, and we're finding the balance there,
Do you think with the rise of short form content, maybe that's a little easier to create whilst being on the road and being able to just have the different, we kind of have to see them as disciplines. They're not, one sadly isn't better than the other anymore, even though maybe in terms of us, we favour long form content because we spent so long actually learning how to do it. And,
Yeah.
But maybe the short form content lends itself a little bit easier because, any ideas or advice for content while I'm on tour would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, people like seeing the behind the scenes. The thing that I think about for long form versus short form is instantly digestible and it can bring new people in. Long form is usually better for the fans, the people who are really connected emotionally to you, and they can be there for longer and be more invested in what exactly you're doing if you're doing long form content around your stuff. So both are part of a good strategy. Look at me talking about social media strategy. I hate that, but like stuff that you think about. I kind of don't care about short form content, but I know that's a game that you need to play. I don't know specifically for you what the good short form content would be, but you'll find the story very often. I'll say this, there's random stuff that I follow. I'm following this one guy who's on TikTok who's going from Egypt to Japan without flying. That's his goal. So you're just watching his journey he's been at it for over half of a year now, and he's like barely into Central Asia. He's just like going all around. And so every day you check in with him, and this is his current adventure, and it's great. I love it. And it's just, he does a very good job of dissecting his day in these little bite-sized nuggets. So the same way that we know about how to like make a YouTube video, because we've watched a lot of YouTube, we know how to, get people sucked in like that. That is a good like approach, is like what gets you sucked in as far as short form content for a creator or for somebody who you watch regularly. And that's the hard bit, because like the regularity, the algorithm's not necessarily going to do that unless you yourself are sucked in enough to watch and engage with this creator on a regular basis. And I don't know, man, like I barely have the focus to, when you're actually out there, I'm just really focused on trying to play music at the highest level. But like, I'm much more focused on the tech. I'm much more focused on the music. I'm much more focused on just eating right and sleeping enough. I'm focused on all these very like on the hierarchy of needs. You have content maybe way up here and then just basic human stuff down here. And I'm trying to focus on the basic human stuff more often than not, than the content game. But, I'm still in the back of my head thinking these things.
I think it is important to show that nothing happens without real dedication. So even if anyone ever tries to make a YouTube video in the first place, they sit down in front of a camera and they have that sort of, they look into the void of the lens and they're suddenly like, oh, okay, maybe this is a little bit trickier, or editing or whatever. And the same with being on stage every night. And I mean, I feel fortunate that the kind of music that I'm playing in comparison to the kind of music you're playing takes maybe a different level of concentration.
Maybe not. Maybe not, because the intensity, I will say this, to give the best show possible, it is just how intensely you're focused on connecting with the audience and connecting with the people on that stage. And it can be whatever style of music. It is that philosophy is music agnostic. And you get out what you put in. And if you go out on tour, My philosophy is that you should be putting more into the live performance, because why else would you be doing this than the content? Because the content, you can make better content, honestly, off tour. I firmly believe the content is best not on the tour, where you can be really focused on providing the best possible story, the best possible narrative for some kind of long form thing. On tour, I think that it's better to be like really, really present and really focusing on that. Granted, your YouTuber brain will never turn off. And so like you will take your camera and you will document, and there'll be great ways of doing this. But I recommend trying to focus primarily on the performance, primarily on how do I just put on the best show I can. And then after tour, cycle through the footage and then tell the story that way, rather than being so invested in telling the story in the moment, because your brain will shut off. You won't be able to say like perfectly like everything you need to say, like, okay, we're here in, I don't know, Omaha, Nebraska, or wherever, or we're here in Pisa, or there's too much stuff happening in your brain at any given time, especially if things are going wrong, which might be a good story. Just remember to take and film as much as you can, and then tell the story after you get back home from tour. It really does. There's too little bandwidth. There's too little bandwidth that you will have as a content creator, unless you can offsource that for somebody to just do all that stuff for you. And then, hey, that's great. But well, I think, film as much as you can. Worry about telling the story later. There'll be time, and then you can process your thoughts and think about how the story actually flows, and then you can really get more into the vlogginess of it all,
Yeah, I have been thinking about that, and I've been putting, the team together to be able to make sure that I am absolutely prioritizing because my show will be approximately like 2 hours, obviously with a little interval.
That's long, yeah.
It will be,
That's really long.
It's a run through of the album. And I'm determining whether or not I start with an acoustic set just solo, or wedge that in between sort of like two halves of the album, and then the hits. They're not hits, but my hits, right, towards the end, or like dotted in between. I'm 34 days out, so just figuring out the set list. Well, I figured out the set list, just figuring out the show. So yes, I am trying to make sure I have not only a band who can help with so many different things, not just playing the music on stage, but like literally like the technical aspects, the setup, the camaraderie, and then having an off-stage band, I'd say. So yeah, taking a crew. I know. Look at me being all fancy. Yeah. But that's why mean the expense of touring is getting a little bit. It's getting nerve-wracking.
Oh, you want to talk expense? It is.
Well, before we get
before
we get into expenses, which I know you've documented quite heavily, I think exactly what you're saying. I know if I can just prioritize documenting, not creating, because just by doing the journey we're creating, it's very different to us being in these four walls. It's like, I know that both of us find it a lot easier to tell stories when you're traveling and seeing something different every day. And whether that started off with some of our little trips that we used to take as opposed to the actual tours. Yeah, or, just me visiting you in New York was always just very easy to just capture. And then,
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is like, I love all tours. I love all tours equally, but some tours are maybe more equally than others because you get to go to places that are significantly different from one another each day. And I'm more specifically, I'm talking like in Europe, it's a lot easier to go to like, today we are in Prague, and then today we are in Paris, and then today we're in Berlin. Whereas when you're touring in North America, maybe, not to shame my country, but everything does kind of look the same day in and day out. But like the idea of documenting versus creating, I think that is an important distinction for people in this world about you have to be the best merry spender you can be. And the only way you can be the best merry spender you can be is not worrying about what happens after the tour. It's what's happening right now on the tour. And that that sort of focus for the stage, for everything, you're going to be the point person for so many people. Just and the audiences there who are excited to go see you, they want to have the Merry Spender experience. And for Sungazer, they want to have the Sungazer, the Adam Neely experience. And a big part of that is just like, okay, I'm here, I'm present, I can really deliver all of that and be in the headspace necessary for that. It's definitely very useful to have a crew and have people around you that you can trust and work with. We generally tour with a front of house engineer / tour manager who takes care of a lot of the details and also makes us sound very good because he's an amazing sound engineer. But it's only 5 people, and like we have to be very self-sufficient in terms of loading everything and everywhere, doing all the sound check, like that balance between how much you can offload, how much you can afford to offload, and then how much you can do yourself is always going to be an interesting one. And you'll learn that balance through touring. Like this is an exciting tour. This is an exciting big first step towards this lifestyle, but there will be more, and you'll learn a lot from this one, and then hopefully you apply it for the next one for what works best for you. Hopefully there's more. We're hoping.
I don't know. This one already, I'm so looking forward to the actual playing, but the organization. And, we wish this upon ourselves. Like, we wanted to be independent musicians in control of our careers. And now I'm like, it all falls on me.
Yeah, no,
I brought this upon myself.
There are so many things that you need to offload very quickly. And then you realize, like, middlemen, they take so much money and they're a pain in the ass. But they do make your life a lot easier sometimes. And to do everything yourself makes it's harder to be the best, most elevated version of yourself that audiences want, that audiences need, and that you can provide on a stage and touring. For YouTube, you can do everything yourself and be the best version of yourself, because that is a way that you can approach the whole thing. It's much more curated. It's much smaller. There are less moving parts. The logistics are not as insane. But then once you're out there in the real world, it all takes a huge toll. And so trying to figure out ways of delegating, it becomes very important. This doesn't need to be in anything. I'm just very curious. Are you working with a booking agent for this particular tour? Okay.
Yes. However, because I am essentially new to the scene, which feels hilarious after however long of attempting to do it, you start again, and it's been 5 years since my last real full band show. Obviously, I've done my little shows where I've just been teasing really my audience and being like, hey, one-off night here, one-off night here. And the thing I'm thinking of, not only I have a booking agent who's also going to help drive. So he's going to come along. Then Sweet. I've got my brother being assistant tour manager, if not also tour manager, and merch.
Do you have a delegated
man.
Do you have a delegated TM, or is your brother just going to be the TM?
I guess my brother is producer, TM. Yeah.
Just call him TM, because TM is it's nice to have somebody be like, where are we eating now? And then somebody had already looked up where all the restaurants are, and just dealing with that kind of detail. Minor detail, it all adds up. It really does all add up. So just delegate him TM, and then be like, all right, we got a TM.
He needs this for his CV so that he can for his next job. And then I've got a lovely photographer, videographer coming on tour as well.
Cool, great.
And then band, which is obviously me, and then producer of the album playing guitar, Pau, and then David playing bass, who has played with Ariel Posen, and then Chris Hardwick playing drums, who's played with pretty much everyone in the sort of Brighton scene. So yeah, it's gonna be
Crew,
fun.
4 band, and yourself.
3 crew,
3 crew. Sorry,
3 crew,
I counted
4
you.
band. Yeah,
3 crew, 4 band, and yourself. That's great. It's
I'm in the band. I count myself as band, I
7.
suppose.
7. I can't count.
Go,
This
man.
is why I'm a bass player. I can't count. Yeah, I mean, 7 people, right? 7.
Yes, Adam.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Play the right notes, mate.
good T-shirt. Nice.
Good T-shirt. Yeah.
Count the right number of people, mate. Okay, yeah, that's fantastic. Like on our first tour, when we did this tour with Shub Saran and Sungazer, we brought along a photographer, videographer. That was great. If we could do that for every tour, we would. That amazing. Having like production assistant / TM, incredible. Having like driver, also incredible, because the amount of time and energy you need to focus on driving often can be very intense, especially in North America. That's like the place where like driving is just like the distances are absurd.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that all sounds awesome, and it will let you be the person that you need to be for the audiences. You could just do it with 4 people, that your band, and then just do the role of TM, do the role of driver, do the role of merch. You could do all of that yourself, and bands definitely do that. But because you're at this point where you have a fan base, you have people who are going to be very excited to see you. I mean, this is the reason why I'm so like passionate about touring live, is because people are there to see you do your thing, and it's like it's so much more personal. It's so much more real when it's in person and there is this energy there than when it's on YouTube, where it's cool. On YouTube is amazing, like and the community there is amazing, but you don't feel it as directly. Your audience might feel it directly, which is great, and it's exciting that way. But there's not that. There's like a barrier. There's the internet. There's social. Like there isn't that same immediacy that comes when you're there performing live. That is addicting. And this is the thing that I wanted to do when I wanted to become a musician. I wanted to be there and share in that kind of experience. And you know, I'm excited for you. It's terrifying, but at the same time, it's like, this is the real stuff. You're going in a good direction, you know.
always in your sort of path that you've forged, I guess. I mean,
yeah.
The playing bit is extremely exciting, and I sort of feel like is the easiest bit. So the other 22 hours of the day, I don't quite know how to. I've done a tour before, but I was support act. I wasn't the headline act. And that's why I feel like it sort of just like elevates it in a different way. Because, as I have said, it's my name on the tin, essentially. And yeah, it's sort of a little bit daunting. But all the other moving parts, and you sort of just don't think when you go and see a band actually how much has gone on behind the scenes to make that possible. And I actually think with your help and other musicians as well who have gone on tour and then documented it on YouTube, and hopefully the kind of content I'll be making on the road, it sort of just shows a little bit more of the realism and as to why you should go and see people live, that you have to like them, they have to be good musicians, they have to put on a good show and all those sorts of things, but to make the effort and get to a show is quite amazing. Like I didn't know what to expect recently, but I went for a little bit of inspiration and went to see Adele at her Munich residency, and I knew what to expect. I knew it was going to be good. Like, you don't want to see Adele and her, it not be a good show. But I had sort of forgotten, because I'm not entirely sure I've ever been to a show that big. It was 80,000 people.
80,000.
Yeah. Purpose-built
That's crazy.
stadium, like wild. Like the screen was wild because I don't think they don't have to pack it up and move it on tour. It was just literally like residency, purpose-built stage. And she stepped out and she sort of like delivered a little bit of her personality in between the songs, like she likes to do with her talking. But she sort of alluded to how much of her day revolves around, this magical 2 hours that she gives. And she's not at dancing. She's not, she doesn't have a routine. She has like choreography in terms of like where she walks to and where she stands and everything. But it's a very like simple show with this non-simple setup of like string players that come up through the stage floor, like all around. What fireworks, pyrotechnics, everything. The screen, incredible. But what I had forgotten, and I've been trying to go to a few shows, is just that unified energy. And then, I was envious of her. I was like, oh my God, imagine what she's feeling right now. And she spoke how she hadn't truly enjoyed shows up until maybe the last handful of years, where she started doing the Vegas residency in front of 4,000 people a night, and then this. And it's sort of that level of comfort on stage that you have to get to, but also allowing yourself to rest in those other 22 hours to be able to make sense of those 2 hours and not just be, as we've all experienced, where you're so excited about a gig and then something has gone wrong and it just knocks your confidence. And then that hour or half hour or 2 hours or whatever it is suddenly over. And you're like, oh my God, I was worrying about that all day and then I didn't even get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So what's your advice for those other hours of like how to just relax, conserve energy to be able to deliver your best on stage?
Yeah, there's so much. There's a reason why there are a lot of regular touring musicians who spend a lot of time in the gym and then work out, and then they eat healthy. They insist on drinking like very low alcohol or no alcohol, except at the very end of the tour, because to do that kind of thing day in and day out is like running a marathon. To go and give that kind of energy and focus for so long on stage, especially like very physical activities like for drummers or what have you. It's a lot. And think about what's necessary to run a half marathon every day, or like do some very intense physical activity every day. Even if it's not physical on that stage, it's the same level of like preparedness, the same level of focus, the same level of honestly takes it out of your like mental capacity sometimes, and treat it with that kind of degree of seriousness. Like you wouldn't be, staying up all night and drinking and then like get no sleep and then expect that activity might be at that level the next day and then the day after that and the day after that. So, approach it with the degree of seriousness that you would for nutrition, body awareness, etc. For all, it's different for everybody. For me, I like to make sure that I run in the morning, whatever that might be. I'll usually do that. I like to make sure that I eat 2 hours before the performance, so I have time to digest, and I eat something relatively light. And then immediately before the performance, I normally just am chilling out. I'm just trying to like calm myself. I normally stretch a lot. That's very helpful. But all of it kind of just adds up because you want to be able to do this regularly. So the point that you made, I like this thing. The point you made about like you're focused so much on like the performance, and then something slightly goes wrong, and then you can't get out of your head, and it's like, oh, it kind of sucks. The whole performance sucks after that, and then it's just like, oh, you can't like live in the moment. That's going to happen pretty regularly, but you get practice getting out of your head when on tour. You get to do that show again and again, and the next time you do the show, you can practice not having that experience, practice just being like letting things go and then staying in the moment. And that's the nice thing about tour, is that you can get the reps in on mindfulness, on staying present and not letting that that missed entrance, or letting that like, I don't know, maybe your mix is bad or something like that, or like letting all these like little things that would normally get to you for a one-off performance get to you when it's a tour. because one-off performances, you often invest so much energy into this like one big performance, and then it doesn't go quite well, and then you feel terrible afterwards. Universal experience for every musician, for every artist. It happens to all of us, and it sucks. But the nice thing about touring, nice thing about performing regularly, is you can learn to undo that habit. You can learn just to be like, well, okay, that sucked, but we're going to do it again tomorrow and do it again tomorrow. And then eventually you get to the point where it becomes very natural, and you can learn the mindfulness of staying present. And, you know, honestly, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating your vegetables, all of that stuff really helps with that. How many shows is the tour that you're doing?
It's quite small because of it being UK only, so it's 8 shows.
I mean, that's enough to like get into a rhythm. 8 shows is definitely enough to get into a rhythm. And by that last show, it's gonna be great. The band's gonna be really, really tight, really killing. Everything's gonna go very smoothly, especially since you're setting yourself up for success with this crew that knows you and all that stuff. So you'll find, I mean, you'll definitely find that like that addicting too, being like, wow, we're just getting started. Like we're like, everything is like working. Why can't we keep going for forever? And then, you know, then you'll have to wait until the next tour, which is often, I don't want to say often, but sometimes how it works for me. It was like at the end of a really, really long tour, when we were touring with Plenty, when we were opening for Plenty, that was the longest tour that we had ever done, and that was for a month. And by the end, the last couple of shows, we were just like, everything was just working, and it was amazing. But it took a while to get to that point. Just reps, day after day, trying to like just grow into the routine, grow into how we made music, grow into just who we were at that time. Not to get too philosophical, but you have to really, it teaches you to know who you are at a given point in your life. Wow, that's philosophical. Anyway, let's get back to the technical.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
We can get philosophical.
Well, you know, on that note, I guess when it comes to going back to the people in the audience, I think the strangest thing for us is that we've ended up building a global audience first, and now trying to build local audiences second, which is completely the opposite way around to how it used to be. But thanks to our platforms, we can do that. How do you find those people? I know you've spoken about looking at your Spotify listeners, but actually realizing that you have this like mega audience, but it's spread out over the entire world. And then when you actually, you know, go on tour, essentially you can't really tour enough as well. It's sort of intimidating. But then learning the lessons of like, where is my audience actually?
Mm-hmm. I will say this, the demographics are very similar. They're all nerds. They're all lovely music school nerds, and I love every single one of them because they are me. They are me from when I was 17 to 25 years old, and it's amazing to see the same pattern of community everywhere, and that is just very fun. You know, the thing I've also noticed is like, because it's more global, the reach, and more like, you know, like everywhere, there's a YouTube audience, there is a potential audience for Sungazer. Generally speaking, larger cities are our friends. Like this is something that, you know, you'll find sometimes in touring bands, like, and touring like apparatuses, I guess, or touring parties, the touring world. You'll find sometimes in the touring world, people making the suggestion you should play off market and grow locally in places that are far away from cities. And I love that idea too. But quite frankly, the majority of music schools for Sungazer are in major cities, and the majority of audiences are in major cities. And for our audiences, even if we really want to play in places that are not like New York City or LA or, all these big cities in the US, it's a lot harder to find an audience there that's built in unless there's a music school there. And you learn these little details about what your audience is when you go out on the road. Like the kind of people that watch your YouTube video might not necessarily be your dedicated fan base for your live show. There's obviously going to be a lot of overlap there, but it might not be like the biggest number of people who come out. And you'll learn like what percentage and also who from the YouTube channel are going to really be wanting to watch Mary Spender live. And the thing that I've always said is like, if you are watching me talk to you about music theory as you eat your bowl of cereal in the morning, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to go see me play jazz fusion live. There is going to be a disconnect there. Some people will, many people might not. And you can really focus on, when you're touring, developing that audience, the people that will want to come out and see you and be part of that. It's a huge advantage to having a global audience as a YouTuber that you've developed beforehand, but it doesn't mean that audience will come out to the shows, but it helps. So like it does help in planning some things. I will say, if we want to talk very specifics, we can talk off mic, what cities are good and what cities are bad in the US or elsewhere.
Name and shame, Adam Neely.
I will
Name
say,
and shame.
I love every city. Every city is great. I love them like my own children, but like my own children, I love some cities more than others. But yeah, it's something you'll learn for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm really, really intrigued. And also, I know it's sort of strange, but like, if it all goes wrong and the shows, they're selling tickets right now and they're progressing and everything, but it's not like a wild, viral sellout. Of course,
it won't. Yeah, it won't be, and it freaks you out at first. Like you're like, wait a second, I have this audience. Like I've been blasting all this stuff, and that's how many tickets. Oh no, it'll be fine. But like because your fame is not predicated on performing music and selling out venues, you have to build from the beginning again. It is an entirely different thing when you're playing and touring music from YouTube. YouTube helps a lot, but you really do have to build from the beginning again with maybe a head start, but it's not one-to-one. And it's kind of scary on one hand. However, it's also kind of freeing. It means like, oh, okay, well, now I can define certain things differently now. But yeah, it's scary when you see the ticket sales and they're not like wildly successful immediately. They will be. Most people buy tickets at the venue, by the way. Not as many people buy tickets ahead of time. By the way, if you're watching, buy tickets ahead of time so that Mary doesn't freak out as much, because it definitely helps. So.
And also to Sungazers Tour this October, right?
Oh, by the way, when is this coming out? Because we literally are announcing more dates in an hour and a half. So presumably you won't edit and post this in the next hour and a half. So no. Come see the Against the Fall of Night tour, October, December, and January, wherever you are. We're going to be in North America and also Europe. Going back to the idea of it not being a wild sellout and actually just showing the realities of being not only an independent musician, but just like a 21st century musician, which is, I guess, my tagline. The best thing about it is weirdly having the YouTube channel to be able to talk through the nightmares or the realities, and to be able to show people that it's not that easy. Because sometimes you do look at people and, Instagram versus reality situations where it's like, wow, they sold however many tickets, and whether it's just literal luck or good planning or enough run-up time or enough marketing spend or whatever it is, or maybe that just
people just like that person better than they like me. It's just sort of interesting, and I sort of feel like you can learn so much more from someone who admits to the, it sort of loses, as opposed to just the wild success that just comes so naturally. And maybe this is why like people actually watch our YouTube videos, because we're not just...
Because we're losers.
We're losers.
Watch our YouTube channels. We suck.
Music nerd losers. Yeah. But I mean, genuinely, like you can learn so much more from someone who says to you, like, look, this was literally impossible to do. There was so much trial and tribulation to get to, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. Like we've done it with YouTube. Now we're trying to do it with live music. I just think it's way more honest. And I kind of love the fact that some nights might be 50% full. Maybe if I'm, hoping there'll definitely be a little bit more than that. But, if a venue is like literally half full, I'm still going to appreciate every single person who got a babysitter, organized a day off work to travel, or flew to the city. Like I've already had emails of people flying transatlantically just to be able to come and see the shows because I don't have a US tour booked. It happens.
That happens,
I mean,
and it's so cool. It's very humbling when that happens, when people travel to different countries to see you because you aren't going to their country. And it's very cool. And then, you have these situations, sorry to interrupt, but I just like, the first time that happened, I don't even want to say I freaked out, but I was like, this is crazy. And you get a real sense of like, wow, the people on the other side of the camera and how much your stuff has meant to them. Mm-hmm. That's really special, and that's very cool. And you get to experience that a little bit. And that I just, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to say that the first time that happened, and it happens pretty frequently where people are traveling from different countries, it's very, very cool. And the thing that I always say is like, I'm very humbled, but please do other things while you're in this country. Don't make me the reason why you came. Use me as an excuse to, I don't know, go see Big Ben, or I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what like the thing that like, go sightseeing, do something else here, experience the country a little bit. I'm glad that I'm the reason, but it's a lot of pressure, honestly. And that's something that's
lie
hard.
to us, lie to us, like be like, oh, actually,
please,
I was here seeing Big Ben, but
yeah.
you just happened to be playing at the same time. Like, lie to us. It is too much pressure. I mean,
yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
The thing I did notice, just watching Her Royal Majesty Adele, was that she looked out into the crowd and she made everyone look like her friend. It was like she recognized everyone in the audience. And I feel like actually the best thing about, our experiences as doing YouTube and going to NAMM and everything, and then you recognizing exactly who your audience is, where they've come from, that you have a similar background, you have so much in common with them. I think that's the true beauty of what we get to talk about online, finding that common ground. And then for that, it's a small percentage of our audiences that actually come to a show and enjoy our original music. But I mean, they're us, they're our friends, really. And that's what I'm really, really excited about. No matter how many people are in the audience, I want to make sure I remind myself I'm in service. Like, I think that's the coolest thing as well. Like, you are, as a musician, in service of your audience, just like we are as YouTubers. Like, it's amazing to talk about yourself all the time, sure. But actually, when you're educating someone, as you've educated literally like millions of people now, it's just realizing like it's not really about you. Like, it's about you. It's not really about you. And I think that I'm trying to remember that everybody in that audience and everybody in your audience, whether it is that they've, they're tying it in with this sort of big level of travel to be able to come and see a show, they're there because you have spoken to them and they have a story that they've written in their heads about you. And I mean, it's how I feel about musicians when I've traveled transatlantically to go and see shows and see people, and
you just traveled to see Adele, right? Like
That was
you
quite
know
a
that
quick
feeling.
flight, but like, yeah, exactly.
I know, but like that general idea. I mean, you understand what it is to be a fan and have that relationship to somebody that really means that has created art and really means something to you.
Yeah.
And I love that idea of service, channeling, and being there as a vessel for other people. You have to protect your own self too, because you're trying to give so much. You've got to make sure to keep a little bit for yourself as well, just to keep going, so that you're not completely burnt out. But that is an important thing for performing and what you mean. And you can only really do this in a live environment and like in person, in vivo, in an audience, and connecting and making music for and with them too. It's much harder to do it on the internet. It's much harder to do it on YouTube. Even though the reach is larger, it's not as deep of a connection. I do want to talk about what you were mentioning before, which was the idea of showing the failure. And this is something that we think about quite a bit in Sungazer, and how much failure to show, because failure makes a good story. Failure makes a great story because it's humanizing. There's stakes. There's like a feeling of how we're overcoming the failure. There's a feeling of like a beginning, middle, and end. You can tell that story on YouTube very easily. It's harder to tell a story of success over and over again because there are no stakes. It's harder to feel emotionally connected to somebody who's always winning. I mean, I guess you have like Instagram versus reality, all of that, but just on YouTube for a vlog, it makes more sense to have stakes and have a plot. The problem is that if the only story you ever tell is failure, then that is how people start to see you. And that has been the case for Sungazer. We have made vlogs like, the airlines lost all of our stuff. We lost all this money on tour. And then that becomes the narrative that people then want to talk to you about every time on tour, rather than like, hey, didn't you have like an amazing time like connecting with other people around this music and having fun counting and being nerds together? No, it was like, oh, Sungazer, they're the band that's always failing. They're always ruining their stuff. They don't know what they're doing. And then it's like, wait a second, hold on. Hold on.
YouTube title, the band that's always failing.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is like the narrative that you're telling about yourself on YouTube is what people will understand for the show. And you're doing a lot of promotion. You're talking about, all the preparation and the narrative. And that narrative is, I think, would be a good one for you because it shows the behind the scenes, your what you're stressed about, the things that you're, doing to prepare, all that stuff. That's all good. But then if you only show the failure, not the success, only show the failure because it's a better story, that's a thing to maybe avoid. And that's because you end up rooting against yourself in the moment. You're like, oh my God, things are going wrong. I get to tell this story. And then it's like, that really messed with me for a while, for like last year. Because I wanted to tell vlogs. I wanted to tell stories. And then I just was not inspired to tell a success story because it is harder to tell a success story over and over and over again. Because ideally, you want to be having successes over and over and over again. You want a show to go well. You want the tickets to sell well. You want people to have a good time. And you want to have a routine because it is a job and jobs have routines. Imagine in your day job, you had to document and do a day in the life of, I don't know, somebody who is working in marketing. Day in the life of somebody who's working in marketing. And they have a good day. They pitch some things to clients. The clients seem to like their pitch. That's great. Okay. You need to tell that story. Now you need to tell that story again and again and again and again and again and again. Because ideally in your day job, you are having a successful career again and again, but it starts to get really boring to make day in the life vlogs of the same thing over and over again. So it's a weird thing. You'll be able to figure this out. You'll be able to navigate it. But I know for myself, I learned to not tell the failures over and over again. Try and mix in some successes,
Well, I think this is a whole YouTube lesson because it's not just making a video and uploading it to a platform. It's being in control of your narrative, deciding what to share, but also most importantly, what not to share. And I mean, that can go into any part of the sort of creative process, whether it's being pigeonholed in a certain genre and you wanting to get out of it, being pigeonholed as a certain type of songwriter. For me, I do write a lot of heartbreak songs. Adele does too. She does all right out of it. I think she's all right. I think she's doing okay. So it's learning what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, but also, understanding the power of that narrative. I mean, that's a really difficult
the power
thing
of
to
a
navigate.
Story. Yeah, because you are telling your own story. What story do you tell about yourself? Because that story is going to be the one that resonates with other people. At every level, musical, YouTube, or otherwise, tell that story. And for me personally, it's hard to let go. It's hard to tell a personal story about myself. There are lots of things that I keep private about myself. I don't tell personal stories through my music. They're very impersonal in a way because they're instrumental. You don't necessarily need to divulge deep personal past, personal history.
Me too. Mine's all instrumental. I don't divulge anything about my life.
Exactly. I mean, and that is a medium thing. Like songwriters versus instrumental musicians, a big part of songwriting is telling a personal story or connecting with people with a personal story. And that often results, you have to divulge something about yourself. That it can be couched in metaphor. It can be like maybe not necessarily the exact thing that happened to you, but you have to bleed on the page a little bit. And part of what I have tried to learn how to do as an instrumental musician with Sungazer is bleed on stage a little bit. And that is meaning like, what do I give into the instrumental performance that people can feel like that is really what I am feeling, and feel it at a heightened level, and give a little bit more of myself than being this very calm and collected research educator person who's teaching you about cool music theory things, and actually like show, okay, well, I'm a human being. This is the thing that I want to give out, which is often very like an ecstatic expression of like the joy of making this music and feeling really like connected with, polyrhythms or all the weird stuff that we do, and like really focusing on that and feeling like that visceral sense of like, that to me is very important for a variety of reasons. How do I communicate that, etc. But it's a story. Everything is a story that you're trying to curate and tell people, because they can then learn about themselves through you. And live music is a great way of doing that. And I think that it's a very beautiful thing, and something that I think everybody with the capacity to, everybody with the drive to, everybody with the desire to, should at least try. Because we're talking about touring. This is very specific. In some ways, it's kind of insider baseball. But for people who are just starting out, like the idea of performing in front of people is very scary, because you do have to give yourself. It's very vulnerable. People are going to be judging you in some way or another. But that's the power, because you can be the person that sculpts the narrative, and you can be the person that is curating the vibe. And through the power of just strumming on a guitar or singing or playing saxophone or drums or what have you, there's so much power in that. And I think that's, I don't know, it never gets old. YouTube can sometimes get old. That never gets old for me, ever.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I was asked the other day, how is it like writing such personal songs and getting the album out into the world, and it sort of having this sort of arc of narrative, and it being called Super Sexy Heartbreak, like, what it's going to be about. And
great title.
I do really feel like YouTube, maybe I made this decision before YouTube, but YouTube's almost like helped me with it, because we are so in control of our narrative, and there are so many things we decide not to talk about in amongst our hundreds of videos where other people are like, well, don't you run out of things to say? But both of us literally look back on music history or current music history, or music business, and figuring out exactly who we are in this new world of musicianship. It's sort of like you can't make enough content. So the vulnerability aspect is so much easier when you're in control. Like if I were being told to be vulnerable by a record label because it will sell, or they think it will sell something, it would be very different. But I think both of us know how to speak to our audiences in the right way. We know how to remain private in another. And yeah, it's just another thing that you just have to think about if you are going into this world, which, I mean, if you want to be a musician now, I don't know how you feel about this actually, if there is some kind of opposing side, but my thing is like, you kind of have to jump on board to this content train if you want to be able to do it sustainably for a long time, because neither of us could actually afford to tour if we didn't have YouTube.
Absolutely not. YouTube, at least by this point, in the beginning of touring, YouTube for sure helped fund a lot of what Sungazer was doing, because there was no way in hell, even with like the audiences and a lot of audiences coming out to see us, there was just no way in hell we would even come close to breaking even touring. Touring is very, very expensive. This might be a good segue into the financial discussion, because I made a video 2 years ago talking about how my band almost lost $17,000 on tour. The expenses since that video have gone way, way higher than that. Mm-hmm. And I can't say specifically why that might be. I mean, it's just traveling around with 5 people across multiple continents and having places for them to stay and paying them a wage which is sustainable for them and ourselves is just extremely expensive. And, I see why so many, longtime touring bands who did not originally start on YouTube have called it quits, because when you look at the math, it doesn't make sense. It makes just a lot more sense to stay at home and make YouTube videos. If we were looking at this purely business, as purely like, how do we run the most profitable business? It's YouTube. The overheads for making a YouTube video are close to nothing, and then the money that you might make through AdSense or through sponsorships or what have you is mostly profit. So the way that you look at your YouTube business versus your touring business is that the touring business is that's not going to make money. There's no way of making money doing it. I mean, there might be a way of profit from this tour, a little profit from this tour, maybe, but for the long term, if you're trying to like really build an empire, you cannot look at the live performance aspect of it. There's no way that making the books make sense and then do it sustainably for a long time. You will kill yourself to try and make profit, and then you won't be able to do anything the next year because your body is so ruined from that tour where you tried to maximize profits. And we are 30-something-year-old adults. We expect to be 40-something and 50-something-year-old adults at some point in the future. We have to take care of ourselves and our bodies here. And part of that involves sleeping in a bed. Part of that involves eating a salad. Like very, very basic things like that. And when you're traveling, those are very, very expensive things over the course of many, many months. And, that is the long and short of it. I'm not going to complain with any of this, because I think we found a way of doing it sustainably. We're not making really any profit, but we're doing it sustainably in a way that I think we hopefully will be able to do it next year and the year after that, and grow the production, grow everything. But really, sustainability is the name of the game here, because I want to be doing this for a while, and I don't want to ruin my back by sleeping on floors every day. So,
or
call me bougie. I don't care.
Yeah, sleeping in the van. I mean, I won't
sleep in the van.
I won't make the meme out of it, but the fact that that was such a, I felt like it in your how we almost lost $17,000 video. It was just perfect, because I do think another way to communicate to your audience is to read their minds. Like, we know what they're going to say now. We know them so well. We've read enough YouTube comments in our time that you really can predict when people are like, oh my God, she's complaining so much about what it costs to be a YouTuber, or, what it costs to go on tour. And it's like, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
but
that's how much it costs.
If we
you want to do it, you want to do it cheaper, go for it. Do it. Hey,
yeah.
Nobody's doing it that way because of all of this. So
I also think it's our responsibility, like with this reach and level of communication, it's honesty. And we're just being honest. Yeah. We're not complaining. We could be doing anything else, and we know that. And we didn't get into music to make money in the first place. So money obviously is not the most important thing here.
If I was focused on money, I would not be doing this touring thing. I swear to God, this is the worst thing for money. I'm just trying to do it. I'm just trying to do it for as long as possible and have the money to do it for as long as possible. That's the only thing that I'm thinking about there. The only real thing that I want to be doing is being on that stage and playing and connecting with people. And this is how much money it costs to do that. Look at this. And so that is really like the perspective that I'm coming from. Yeah. And I'm extremely lucky to be in this place. I am so lucky, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity, all the opportunities. Of course, I've worked hard. You've worked extremely hard building what you have built, and you're working so hard to start this touring enterprise and all that. We're working hard. Everybody works hard, but we're also very, very lucky. And I don't want to take away from that fact that the stars aligned in this way where we could do this. And I am very grateful for that opportunity, and grateful for the opportunity that that fans and that people have, given to me and to us. So, whenever I complain, it's more just this is the reality of it. Do you want to hear about it, or do you not want to hear about it? Mm-hmm. Most people want to hear about it. And then some people really don't want to hear about it because it sounds like complaining to them, because either they haven't done it, or I don't know, they just hate musicians. So I don't know.
Well, I actually think another thing that has become my why, other than literally whether it's educating people in music history or music business, or just the realities of being a singer-songwriter, or guitars, or whatever it is, it's actually showcasing that you don't need to be a professional musician to call yourself a musician. And it's very admirable. And I'm actually envious of people who are amazing musicians, and we know of these people, and they decide, you know what, I don't want to make a business out of that. I don't want to wreck my bank account by going on tour for, and I'm, in my heart of hearts, I'm a little bit jealous of that self-awareness, the musicianship that they get to hold on to, that they don't feel that they need to express themselves on stage or on YouTube videos and talk a lot about themselves and everything. And I really admire that level of ego in terms of not really having one, as opposed to our egos in this sort of lane. I think that's my new thing, where I'm do you know what, actually, if I do tell you about the realities of it, maybe it will save someone from the heartache of them never making it as a professional musician in the first place, because it's already hard enough. You already have to be, you have to showcase a kind of level of excellence to be doing what you're doing, to be able to turn it professional and actually get people watching. So to avoid many more broken hearts, because we all know of those musicians where it's well, I couldn't make it, or I got dropped or whatever, and then I turned my back on music. And it's no, music is not the issue. It's all the other things that are the issue. And actually, if we can just get as many people enjoying making music for the cathartic element, let alone the academic element, let alone just the emotional, just human element, it's sort of I think that's maybe where I want to go with my level of communication on just the realities of all of this, because I think it's so much more important that people are playing music and expressing themselves for themselves than for the look of being, a musician professionally or.
Yeah,
I don't know.
for me, it's always come down to community. How do you want to be part of a community? And there's so many great musicians who are part of communities, but they're not necessarily touring or recording, or maybe they're recording like in DAWs or like sharing what they've done. And that to me is like really what it comes down to. It's like the community of people that you find as a musician, the things you want to share, the music you want to make, the music you want to listen to and listen to together. All of that is like ultimately the end game that I want everybody to have, is find a community of people that you can play with or share music with or just talk about music with. And that is really what it comes down to. And then everything else above that, quote unquote, professionally, can really suck the joy out of it, can suck the meaning out of it if you lose, like, it can suck the joy out of it if you lose sight of the community aspect, the sharing, and like the reason why you wanted to make music in the first place, because everything else about it is just a brutal job. It's the worst. There's so much about it that is not regular. You can't expect a regular paycheck. There is no job security. It can be brutally physically demanding. Like everything that is very bad about jobs goes into music. And the community, you can lose sight of the joy that comes from making music with other people and for yourself. And sharing this stuff, I think that is part of it, is just like sharing the jobness of it all, which is, it's just, that's what it is. Yeah, like for all the good and the bad and everything, this is what it is, and people can make the decisions on whether or not they want to go down that road. But I think for me, it was certainly worth it, but it was a lot. And I'm going to say this, like, in terms of looking at music as a job and all of the financial intensity that goes alongside it, I was lucky because I saw in my mother and her brothers what being a working professional musician was, and it was not glamorous. There was a certain romanticism about it for sure because of the heroic degree of musicianship that they would show day in and day out. One of my uncles is a church organist, and so a lot of what he does in terms of leading choirs and then leading musical groups in church and then writing arrangements and performing, just the sheer musicianship that goes alongside that is intense. And I romanticized that kind of thing growing up. And so I could look up at like being a musician is this thing, but it's not like performing on a stage in front of 3,000 people. That's cool. But I also had this other side of it, which was a lot of work, like a lot of work. And I knew that that was what I was getting before I went into music. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a working musician. Like I'm going to have a really good ear. I'm going to train my ear. I'm going to have good arranging chops so that I can work and be doing this thing, which is, I've had many careers in music. That was my first career, was professional session musician, then YouTube, and now touring musician, weirdly, which is its own separate thing on top of everything else. And the more I've done it, the more I've realized there's so many different ways that you can do music. It's not one thing. And, if anybody has watched my channel, I hope they recognize that fact, that there are so many ways that you can approach this professionally or otherwise.
I couldn't agree more. And you're right, there are so many different lanes to be able to explore now. I mean, now more than ever. And I guess looking at both sets of parents for us, that hard work element has definitely been instilled. So when people do turn to me and they go, ooh, that sounds like a lot of work, I'm like, every job is a lot of work. It's just deciding what kind of work you want to be doing. And, also I think alongside the hard aspects of being a musician, obviously there are hard aspects to so many jobs, and there are much harder jobs than being musicians. We are obviously open about that. I think it's something about, I don't know, like the sort of like resilience that it takes just to be sort of like last man standing as well. Like neither of us are, we weren't wunderkinds. We didn't like showcase our chops at 6 years old, you know.
I'm really not very good at bass. That's the secret. I just kept doing it for long enough.
The funniest thing is I know that all the best musicians that we actually look up to feel the same way. But I mean, you know, if you want to be doing whatever lane it is, whatever industry you're in, it really is last man standing. And I mean, if you quit, then that's it. But it's just so funny. It's just like literally coming down to self-awareness. What can you tolerate? I can tolerate a lot of embarrassment, which I also think is another lane of being a musician that people don't necessarily talk about that much. Like a lot of embarrassment. Like I've made so many mistakes on stage, whether it was like the classical music when I was a kid, to then being a teenager, evolving through that to university, to then being a songwriter. Originals, the shows were to 3 people, which was my dad, the sound engineer, and maybe a friend I, dragged along. Whoever I was supporting never turned up. So that was embarrassing in front of like the 3 closest people to me. And then, I mean, whether it was being a cover set artist and getting beers poured over me, mic stands shoved in my face from people just, dancing a little bit rowdily. There's just a lot of things that I think then make all of this actually a hell of a lot easier. And to be honest, these shows, although they're difficult to actually fund and do, and, touring is a beast to itself, they're also the easiest shows that you and I have ever done because people know what to expect. They know that we're human. You've spoken about failures. You've spoken about successes. You've showcased your music. People know what to expect in terms of that music. They know that there are going to be a lot of notes, a lot of time signatures.
All the stuff.
A lot of bass face.
The audiences are on our sides. That is a huge advantage most of the time. Because we're also playing festivals. And
New fear unlocked.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, this is stuff. Because that was the most amazing thing. Is like, oh, these headline shows, this is incredible. These are our audiences. And we learned and we built shows around that idea of like, hey, are you guys here for time signatures? And then the crowd goes, yeah. But then we started playing in festivals that maybe they aren't on our side yet. Maybe we're on festivals that the music makes sense, but at the same time, they aren't in on the joke yet. They are like, who's this band, Sungazer? And you do have to then start tailoring this. And, for you opening for some of the various artists that you've opened for, you have to bring people on your side. I mean, they're there to listen. They're there to have fun, but they're not like intimately familiar with you as much as they are with the main artist. So there's always like a back and forth. I will say that it's a lot easier playing to a crowd of, a couple hundred people who like your music than it is playing to 10 people who don't know who you are and don't care. But there are many aspects of these shows which are a lot harder in some ways because there is this freedom in not caring. There's this freedom in playing to an empty room that doesn't care about what it is that you're doing, because then you can just be like, hey, I'm chilling, I'm playing. And there is a lot of pressure that I put on myself and that comes with these bigger shows. It's different, I'll say. It's not easier or harder. It's different. So where are you playing? Where in the UK are you playing?
I am playing 8 cities. I am playing Liverpool, Bristol, London, Glasgow, Leeds, Birmingham, Cambridge, Southampton?
Yes.
Did I nail it?
You nailed it, not in the right order, but
not fine. In the right order.
I was going to say the routing that made very little sense in the order that you did. Yeah, that's gonna be great. Have you ever played in Glasgow before, or have you ever played in?
Yeah, I've played in. I've played in all everywhere. I've played everywhere, possibly apart from Liverpool. And ironically, Liverpool is literally like one of the best-selling shows.
Cool.
So yeah, I mean, it's at the Cavern, so it's kind of cool.
Sick.
Yeah,
Are
it's
you,
all familiar territory.
Nice. Are you all traveling in a Sprinter van? Like, how are you traveling?
Yeah, we're doing 9-seater van, but
Yeah.
for 7 people, just to have a little bit of room for gear. And then we are doing hotels.
Oh yeah.
I did look into the costs of getting a bougie bus, and then I was like,
no way in
oh,
hell. No
oh,
way
no.
in hell. No, you're Sprinter van territory, baby. We're Sprinter van territory. You don't go higher than that.
I was
The amount of
trying to be a
money for
bit bougie,
buses.
and then I looked at it and I was like, oh my
Oh,
god,
no,
yes,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. You until you are a name and you can really do it and do like 1,000 cap rooms. You're in a Sprinter van, and it's fine. Like the Sprinter vans are, you can get it's honestly quite nice as long as the drives are like not too much more than like 4 or 5 hours a day. It's totally bougie. It's actually totally fine. I don't want to say bougie, but it's totally fine. Yeah, I mean, you learn very quickly. Like there are some luxuries that are just way too far expensive for your current budget, and you learn really quickly the amount of money, the expenses for these tours are astronomical, like 6 figures easily for certain runs, even without a fancy tour bus, even without all this stuff. It's just getting people, getting the merch, getting the things from one place to another. Like the way I can say this is like, imagine a family vacation. Imagine like you're going out with your family for 5 days somewhere, and how much money you spend on that family vacation, and how much time it takes to save up for that family vacation to go somewhere. Thousands of dollars. It's very expensive. That's just you and 4 or 5 people traveling to one place. Just multiply that by 30 places. That's literally how much it costs to go on tour for bands. That's like, there's no magic sauce to any of this. That's just literally the amount of money that you would spend on a vacation, quote unquote, to get human beings from one place to another. Not even paying for like the expensive fancy stuff, just getting your people from one place to another. And chances are on your family vacation, you're sharing a hotel room. You may or may not want to be doing that with a touring party too. So it's like, that is just the amount of money that it will cost. And if, I've a friend of mine, Sarah McDonald of the New York Philharmonic, she did this like video with Gracie Terzian, who's this great like YouTube educator. She plays ukulele and she teaches music theory stuff. And they did a video together where Sarah was breaking down the costs of like touring the New York Philharmonic, which is a big band. And a big band meaning like literally 18 people. So what Sarah would do is she would like contract a majority of the local musicians and then travel with like a core rhythm section and a couple other people to save money and to try and figure out ways of like making it actually work with a big band. And then Sarah spent roughly $32,000 for like this short little tour. And people were freaking out like, how, like, that's insane. Like you could have saved so much money. And like, you really couldn't have. There's no way. Trust us. We obsess over how to like save the money. And then if you're going to have like treat your employees, which is literally what you are doing, your business, you can't expect your employees to sleep on the floor of the McDonald's to save you money. So why would you expect your employees, the musicians who play with you, to sleep on the floor of the venue to save you money? It's the same thing. So, I mean, I could go off for forever on this, but
yeah, I mean, I'm going to be pretty transparent about the expenses and the results of the tour. I think it's just amazing. I mean, I saw a post by Cory Wong where he broke down
oh yeah, for
literally
one gig.
from one gig, and it was 6 figures, and it's like
6 figures of expenses for a single gig. Yep.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
I mean, it's wild, but I mean, it's just really, really important to share this. I think so. And I mean, it also stops people maybe looking down the touring route as the way to get known. It's like, no. Take things into your own hands. Build an independent business that is not reliant on that kind of expenditure. And then go from there. I mean, we both built this from zero, and we used YouTube as that tool. And there are other platforms to be able to do it. But
the line that so many people said for so long was that, oh, artists don't make money on streaming, they'll make money on tour. That doesn't happen. The question is like, well, how do artists make money? Great question. They don't. Like, no artist makes money. There is no means of making money. I will say this. In our experience, because we are not signed to a label, we are, like, all the streaming revenue does go to us. And if you aren't signed to a label, streaming revenue and record sales is actually how you can get some profit after a while. It's not amazing, but it is, I'll say, a significant amount more profit than we make on tour is just through streaming. It's not like a reliable profit, I should say. Sometimes on tour we do make a profit, and it's great, and that's like a sizable profit, but all the money that we made is just dedicated towards expenses for the next tour usually. Anyway, so it's a whole thing, and it's something that I've been learning about as a YouTuber who's going into this world. It's a lot different than YouTube, but it's very fun, and you should try it, Mary. You should do it.
Okay, I will.
Hey, so you're welcome for becoming a YouTuber, and you're welcome for becoming a touring musician. No, I will say this, it's very exciting to see you do this stuff, because I'm like, oh, thank God she is like doing, as somebody who I've known you and I've like been friends with you for so long, and like we've connected over our YouTube careers and like found like a real community on YouTube, and like people who understand the stresses of this thing, specifically YouTube music. It's exciting to see you go out and then do your music in front of people and tour. And I know it's going to be this really wonderful, amazing thing. And I think that if you are a fan of Mary's, you will really like her live show, which I haven't seen yet, but you should really go check her out because it's awesome. It's an amazing show. You will leave crying. You will leave a transformed person, I swear. I'm talking to the camera here. I know I'm talking to you here, but
I'll send you the check later. Yeah, no, I'm very excited, and also I'm very, I mean, it's just been a transition. I think, again, one of the messages that we're just trying to communicate is all of this just takes time. You know, if when we first met, you'd already been doing YouTube for a little while. I was pretty new into the world of YouTube.
You were a baby YouTuber, for sure.
I was baby YouTuber, and I still had a full-time job, and then made the transition into being full-time YouTuber. And then 5 years later, I don't know where that time went, it's now just looking at being a full-time musician. And the YouTuber part is a huge aspect. And I'm so in love with filmmaking. And the sort of like documentaries that we're sort of drifting into. And I've been building a team that is definitely, my God, helping me with that while I had to sit and make the actual debut album. So I've definitely got a slightly different thing going on where I'm like, there is no way I'm giving up YouTube anytime soon. And I'm going to keep that rolling. And I'm going to be doing these shorter tours to make sure it's sustainable, because I just love it too much that I don't want to leave it. And also I have so much help that helps me enjoy it, just like I'll have help to help me enjoy the tour. So I mean, it's just about choosing what your day wants to be as a musician, and figuring out what that day is and how you can keep repeating that day. And I mean, just, I don't know, they can look at our careers and see our pitfalls and our successes, and I mean, people can just make their own paths now, which I think is stunning.
Let me ask you a question. This is actually, I remember talking to Pliny, the guitarist that we were opening for, and he asked me, like, does playing live feel as validating for you as it does for me? And then I was like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, this is validating. This is making everything feel. And I didn't even really think about that until he asked that question. And he's like, yeah, this is the real stuff. And that sense of feeling like you are building something real is it's hard to really, with YouTube and with these films and with the documentaries, it feels real on some level, but for me, I'm just going to talk about for me, it feels like there is a culmination. I think that's really what it is. It's the culmination of things that I just really love, because it does validate myself and validate all the hard work that I've put in. And I think that you'll feel a similar thing, that you'll feel like, okay, this is it. This is the cherry on top. This is a nice way of tying it all together.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And I mean, to be able to look into the next few months and see this as part of my career, and to have the opportunity to do it, yeah, it's a complete dream come true. Or, and it just is what it is. I mean, everything has ups and downs. Life has ups and downs. And that's what makes it even more sweet when it is like a beautiful evening on stage. Everything goes right. You switch off your brain and you just get to play music for those few hours. Sounds all right to me. All right. Well, oh my God, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your motivational speeches and
Mary,
then also terrifying.
You are
realities.
a queen. You are royalty. You deserve everything that is going for you, and you will do great on tour. I know it. You have put in the work. Is that good motivation?
I'm too English for that. You know me.
Okay.
It's instead being like, yeah, I guess you'll be fine.
You'll be fine. It's fine. Nothing matters anyway. It's fine.
Nothing matters
Whatever.
anyway. Yeah. We're just tiny ants spinning around a planet. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You have been watching Tuesday Talks with Mary Spender and Adam Neely. Is it Tuesday? It is Tuesday. Wow.
It is actually Tuesday. I'm actually filming
Holy
Tuesday Talks on
crap.
Tuesday. Isn't that meta?
That's awesome.